house, and we inject the foam in the block of the entire perimeter.
What does that do for you? What does that do for the house?
The foam in the walls?
It's got a higher R value. A lot of people use Fyfoil, Fyfoil, which is really, it's a piece of foil with a paper back on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about it's this thick.
And I think the R value on it's 1.5.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And ours is like 9, isn't it?
9.5.
So, and you just take this, it's like paper, you can just rip it. And that's about, it's 2 layers of this, 2 thicknesses of this. And they just staple it on the
Let me guess, it's cheaper.
It's
Of
cheaper.
That's why
course.
they do it.
Way cheaper. This will cost you like $90 to do in a house,
Yeah.
where the injected foam is like $400.
But it
Depending
makes
on the
a
size
huge
of the
difference.
house.
Right.
It sound deadens your house,
And it affects the R value,
and it makes a big difference on the R value.
big difference.
Which does what? What's the R value do?
Energy efficiency.
Back to my energy.
Okay, some other things that just in this feature sheet that we should talk about. We use what's called CPVC pipe, supply pipe for plumbing. And you may have seen it, it's kind of a beige color or almost white. It looks like plastic, that's what the PVC part is. It has a 40-year guarantee with it, the pipe itself. Generally, what used to happen is people would take coiled copper. It would look like a hose. You know, it would be rolled up like a hose is, the 1/2-inch copper, and they would put that roll it out underneath the slab, and bend it up into the wall, and then they would cap it. So this piece coming out of the wall here to the water supply was one consistent, continuous piece of copper. Very expensive. Copper's very expensive. So they come up with this product called CPVC pipe, and they use the long pieces and they put joints in them and stub them up out of the wall with elbows, and like they do normal, you've probably seen PVC put together. Same thing. The CPVC is guaranteed for 40 years. The copper is guaranteed about as long as you can, before you can get to the phone, it expires. What happens, what really started all this was the advantage to the copper that it was a continuous piece. The disadvantage is it decays.
Most
Once-
when you put concrete on top of it.
Yeah, and if it touches the concrete, it'll decay quickly. So that's why they put plastic down. One of the reasons they put plastic down on this, before the concrete's poured, and all that pipe is dug into the dirt and covered back up. So if the copper fails, just like if the CPV would fail, if the copper fails, it's almost impossible to fix it. So then what happens is it costs about $3,000 to the homeowner to take the supply line back from where it comes into the house, run it up in the attic, run it across the attic, and drop it down the walls. Because you can't dig up that whole slab and try to figure out where it is.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's why we use CPVC.
Good idea that. Okay.
And of course, all the waste lines are PVC, you know, the 1.5 or 3-inch waste lines. Just so you know, does everybody know what those round green lids are that are outside the front window of the houses?
The grinder?
Huh, the grinder.
Mhm.
So everybody's familiar with that. Are you? It's really like a little lift station, if you will, where the effluent from the toilets go into that tank, and from that tank it gets pumped into the sewer line.
Okay.
Because the sewer lines are either gravity fed, which means if you're in a part of town that's higher than where the sewer plant is, they're gravity fed. They just flow. If you're way out and your lot actually is down even or lower than where the septic or the sewer goes, then they have to pump the effluent to
And it's
get
called
it
a
out.
grinder?
Mm-hmm.
It's a grinder.
Okay.
And with that grinder, they put on the side of the, well, whatever room's over there, let's say in the Madison, on the side of bedroom 4, just around the front corner, there will be, that's typically where it is, there will be a box on the wall with a red light on it. And that is hooked up to the grinder. When the grinder fails, that red light comes on. So they know to call the city and have them do something about it. But that's what that is. That's a control box for the grinder.
Okay.
Okay. We provide surveys. We provide all the surveys, which are the boundary, which we're going to get into. We do the boundary. We do a elevation. We do a form board survey, and then we do an as-built, which is the final survey that tells you that the house is everything on that lot, where everything on that lot is located. Like the foundation of the house, where the well pump is located, if you have a well, where the well is. It describes everything on the lot. And people should keep that. But every lender wants that when we're done, because they don't want us encroaching on the property next door. And that's another thing about the terms. The encroachment means that the most common one is a fence. If you have a property line, and your neighbor's fence is 2 feet over on your property, and you're buying this lot, when they do a survey of that lot, it will show you the 4 corners, which we're going to get into. And if the fence encroaches onto your property, you have the right to make those people move that fence. Now, once you close, you don't have any right at all. Doesn't seem like. I mean, the only way you can get anybody forced into doing something is to say to the seller, well, this has an encroachment, you need to get it fixed, taken care of before I will buy this property. But there's various encroachments, but that's the most common. Easements are another thing that you need to know about. We're going to talk about that, but one, if you're in the country and there are easements, they could be for various things like people will buy what they call flag lot. Well, we might as well talk about it. Let's just do that. Okay, this is a survey of the land. This is what you would get from your surveyor. Now this is done where they go actually go out in the field, they start at a benchmark somewhere, and they start taking measurements from that benchmark. They're all over the city, the benchmarks. Because when they laid out the streets, to build the streets in the city of Port St. Lucie, they had to have reference points. You know, how far to cut the ground down, how high to build it, whatever. So they have these things called benchmarks, which are generally in the street. Sometimes they're in the telephone pole. Sometimes they're over in a ditch, but they're somewhere. And that's the reference point. Like when they did this lot, this survey could have started down here on the corner. Could have started down here on the corner and with the benchmark and started working their way up the street to get to this lot. And then they would set this benchmark in the road, which would allow them to set all these points where the property line is. So, just to give you a feel, this is the lot. The blue line is the boundary. Now your lot, when you buy a lot, only comes to the house side of the ditch. Of the bank where you come out to the street and it dips down like this. So at the top, up here is where the lot stops. That would be right here. This is a swale, and this is the edge of the pavement of the street. This is typically about 15 feet from your property line, which is the blue line, to the edge of the street is typically 15 feet. The typical setback is 25 feet. That's this green line, which is referred to as the building envelope or the setback line. So you can actually build a structure within that green line. And these you need to write down. This is for the city of Port St. Lucie. The front setback is 25 feet.
That's between the blue and the green?
Yes, this is 25 feet. The backyard is 25 feet. And each side is 10 feet. So, let's talk about that a second. This is your building envelope. So if you have a 125-foot lot, you really only have 50 feet you can build, or, I'm sorry, 100 feet you can build on. 75 feet. 75 feet from here to here. Okay? That is for the permanent structure, which means the house. But you can take your pool back to within 10 feet of the back property line. So you get it. So if I wanted to put my pool here, I could come clear back to here, but I could only build the house to this point, which is the 25 feet. So the deck of the pool could come clear back to 10 feet within 10 feet of the back property line. The side yards are 10 feet. The front's 25 and the back's 25. That's typical. Now when you get into cul-de-sacs, it's still the same information, but it works differently. Like, if this is a cul-de-sac lot, and let's say this is a corner lot. This one's still 25 feet, 10 feet, 10 feet, 25 feet. This one depends on which way you face the house.
Mm.
If the house faces this street, then you have 25 feet here, 25 feet there, 10 feet here, because there's another lot here, right? This is the street. And on this secondary road front, you can use up to 20 feet. So this is 20 feet.
This would be an example of the model.
Mm-hmm.
Right, except flipped over. So it's 20 feet from the secondary street. The primary street is where the house faces. That's where you put the house number, right? So you can see it. 10 feet here, 25, and 25. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason I'm telling you this. This is typically, these lots are typically anywhere from 85 to 95 feet wide from here to here. Typically. And the reason for that is because of this curve and the extra 10 feet, because this side yard's 10 foot. Typically in an 80-foot lot, this would be 10 foot. But when it's a corner, it's 20 foot, so they had to make the lots bigger on the corner. Here, this is 25 feet, 25 feet, and 10 and 10. So, typically, on a cul-de-sac, you have a 60-foot front. If that makes sense. This is 60 foot. On this lot, it's 80 feet. This particular one was 81, but this is typically 80 feet, the frontage. 60 feet, and these are typically 85 to 95 feet. So the rule is, the setbacks, this 25 feet, wherever you, let's see, how do I want to say that? Well, I'll go back to this. All of our houses that are on this wall will fit on this lot with a pool. Okay? That's the way they were designed. to be, and some of them are 55 feet or 50 feet or 59.8, but they're not 60 feet. We hold it back a couple inches. So that house will fit there. So here, if this is 60 feet at the street, at this building line, it has to be 80 feet, at least. Right. And the reason for that is because everything has to be 80 feet wide at the building line, the front setback line. Now I'm talking about the city. When you get outside the city, everything goes all over the place. So it's 80 feet here. So our house will fit on cul-de-sac lots at typically the normal setback. The advantage you have is this is the front of the house, right? Across here. But as you go back, you can see if you put a regular square house on here at 60 feet, or whatever it is, you would really, as it starts to go back, every foot it gets wider. So you could have a house back here that had a bathroom popped out, or, you follow what I'm saying? So it depends on the lot, if the house will fit, but the house is designed to fit on a standard 80 by 125 lot. Typically, when you look at this survey, these pins are set, these are steel pins or monuments that they're called. They're like cement with a steel rod through them, drove into the ground. But these things are flagged when the surveyor goes to the lot and surveys them. And they put these pins in the ground, and these are all reference points. So you know when you go, you can go to the lot and you can see. Typically the way it works is, here's the street. Okay, here's the way the lots are laid out, right? These are the corners. Okay, these are 80 by 125. And these are a little bigger like that. So here you go down the street. In our contract, it says that, generally speaking, the house will be built with the garage on the side where the power supply is. And the way they do the power supply is they generally, now sometimes it's a little different, there's a power pole right there. The reason for that is that pole can feed 4 houses. So the next power pole is going to be here, would be down here. Would be here to feed 4 houses. So when you look at a lot of the power poles are on the street too. But like these interior lots, when you look at this, these power poles could be here or here, right? So when you go to look at a lot and you see 2 power poles on the front of the street, there are 2 lots between those 2 power poles, not 1. Because everybody looks at those lots and say, oh, well, it goes from here to there. Well, that's not what it is. It's half that. So really, it's 160 feet between these poles. So if we're building on this lot, we would put the garage here like that. The power pole would hook up to that. This house would have the garage on this side, and the power pole would hook up to that. So in our contract, which we'll get to later, it says exactly that. Our houses are designed to be built with the garage on the power supply side. If you want it flipped over, you can do that, but it costs you $900. Because the power company will only run 90 feet of cable. They'll run 90 feet of cable in their installation, which will swing in. If you want something different than that, you can do one of 2 things. You can let the power company, let's say we're building on this lot, the power's here, and you want the garage over here. For some reason, you like the garage on that side. So, the power company would hit the house here, which would be maybe the bedroom end. We would have to run a tube, a channel, from the bedroom where they would mount the exterior circuit breaker box, would be mounted to the exterior of the house with a lock on it. We would run a cable up the wall, through the attic, over to the garage. So we would run a cable up here, over to there, and over to here, and mount it on the wall in the garage. So that's what it costs. The other alternative is to run this underground, and it costs $900 as well, because we have to get somebody to dig it and attach it to the wall in the garage.
Is it 900 or is it 1800? Isn't it 900 for the underground and then 900 for the extended service?
Well, this,
Yes, so it'd be 1800 for the
right,
burial.
for the two.
Okay.
If you want it, unless they can take it over here and hook it up to this, and probably they could do this if it doesn't run into the septic system. Or not the septic, but the grinder. It just costs more money to do it that way. But if somebody wants it, they want it.
And the people do want it.
And there's people who want it.
Brianna, I need you for a minute.
Smoke break.
Turn that
That's
off.
okay.